Welcome back to another tea time with me, Amanda Prochaska. I hope you have your favorite drink with you because we are going to be diving in to a very interesting topic today, which is all about supplier enablement. We are going to go through what supplier enablement entails, how you can accelerate your supplier enablement through using a couple of different techniques, and why supplier enablement is so important for you to get the value out of your source through pay program. So, with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. My drink of choice today, I hope you have yours, is in this cute little bunny mug. It was just Easter over this past weekend, and I have a very Eastery drink. It is a strawberry blossom lemonade. So going to be enjoying this with you today. The topic of supplier enablement has been coming up a lot lately in the procurement world. I think a lot of people might be struggling with it. You might be struggling with it if you're watching this video. So let me explain a little bit about what supplier enablement includes, because it can be actually very varied when you're talking to a tech provider, if you're talking to an SI. It can mean all kinds of different things to other people. So supplier enablement is at the very highest level getting your suppliers to use the technology. Okay, very, very simple. Easy enough to be said that way. But supplier enablement, when you look at the details, includes things like, do you have all of the supplier information that you need to transact with that supplier moving forward in this new system? The most common culprits when it comes to information gathering is PO email address, banking informations. If you're using a payment system moving forward, maybe you don't have all of the banking information that you need to electronically submit payments. And then contact information for the person who might be able to send you an electronic invoice, or at least get set up to do so. Those are challenging things in organizations. I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So the story was, when I worked at MGM Resorts, we were faxing our purchase orders. Now, this was years ago. Not that long ago, though. Like fax machines, I think we were keeping them in style. But so what we had to do when we were moving to a source through pay platform and we wanted to transact more electronically, not via fax, we actually had to do a fax campaign out to the suppliers saying, yo, what's your email address for where you want your POs to be sent to? And where should we be sending the remittance advice when we do submit payment? So we had to do this whole campaign. Now we had, I don't know, over 20,000 suppliers that we were doing this with. It was a large group of people. Not all of them received purchase orders, so we were able to whittle it down. But that's the type of activity that we're talking about. Same goes with banking information, which I'll tell you a little bit more about here in a second. We have a really good case study around this that we did at at Wonder Services. But banking information often comes up, PO addresses. You have to do the due diligence around getting that information. And if you don't have good contact information today, how do you go about doing that? Do you call suppliers? Do you email them at the generic email address in hopes that someone is going to respond back? It is quite the undertaking. It does take manual effort to get you to the results. So data collection is one aspect of supplier enablement. Oftentimes you'll hear your SIs and the technology team talk about supplier enablement as pure electronic invoicing, like CXML or EDI. That is absolutely true, and that is a very, very technical part of supplier enablement, where you're setting up maybe a punch-out catalog, or you're setting up electronic CXML invoicing for those suppliers. That does take a very high-touch effort. Usually there's only a handful of suppliers that you're going to be doing this with out of the gate, but your SIs, Wonder Services does this, but your SIs usually also put a lot of focus here. So because they'll do all of the testing, they will do the configuration back and forth to make sure the files are integrated the way that they should be. So that is also an aspect of supplier enablement. So you have the data gathering, you have the data integration, but then you also have this other aspect of a supplier enablement, which is getting them to transact in the ways that you want them to transact in. So for instance, if you want your suppliers to be submitting invoices through a portal, or if you are electronically, or if you want them to send you an ASN, an advanced shipping notice, after they've received a purchase order or a purchase order confirmation, all of that also is supplier enablement. So it is a very vast area of concern when it comes to your implementation or even post-implementation success. And here's the reason why. I'm gonna give you why supplier enablement is important before I go into the case study and kind of the work that can go on around this topic. So why is supplier enablement important? When you look at a procure-to-pay platform implementation, where are you going to get the ROI? I would start there, right? And the ROIs can vary a little bit here and there depending on the company. Some companies are more about user experience. Some of them are about your savings. But I will say, from my experience of doing this for many, many years now, I see two areas of quote unquote value or ROI that you can get from this implementation. The first one is getting better negotiated pricing. So you can do that in various different ways, driving up compliance through uses of catalogs and embedding your contracts into your transactional process. You can maybe negotiate better contracts in the future, go out to RFP and do a competitive analysis. So there's that whole bucket. You also have a bucket of reduction in maybe cost of supporting the process. That could be automation of the buying process. It could be automation of your invoice processing. Okay. And again, all kinds of different levers that you can pull to get there. But the one that I want to focus on right now is the automation of your invoicing process. Now, there also could be a lot of upstream things that can happen through supplier enablement, but it all really comes down to how often are you touching these transactions? And if you can reduce the amount of touching of transactions, you are going to reduce the amount of cost that you have internally to help support this process. So if you've been sold a procure-to-pay platform and you still only have less than 5% of your invoices coming in electronically, that is going to be a problem, right? Because you are drastically reducing your ability to be able to return on that ROI or get the value from the system. So that is a big issue, right? But then there's also upfront in the process where, like, if you wanted to transact on purchase order, but you don't have PO email addresses, so now your buyers have to go in and touch each transaction to try to figure out where to send this to. That is also a problem, right? Then you're removing yourself from an potentially automated process to be able to reduce the cost further. I'll take that even a step further. Punch out catalogs and CXML on that aspect of supplier enablement. If you don't have more on catalog and you revert to freeform, you're going to reduce your ability to understand what you're buying. You're going to maybe reduce the ability to contract or do some more sourcing activities because the data is not overly clean. And you're also then touching all of those transactions as a buyer, because typically if it's on catalog, it's fully automated because you have a price and you have a supplier already selected. So supplier enablement really underpins so much of the value that you could be getting from one of these source through pay implementations. So you need to get it right. And it takes much more effort than I think almost anyone is expecting, at least now in the current technology sets that we have. So I'm going to talk a little bit later on about how technology is evolving and maybe what to look out for here. But before I get there, let's talk a little bit about how you might be able to attack this problem. So we actually just did work my throat is really dry today, so excuse me if I'm taking a lot to drink today, but it's so good too. So we just did work with a client who was going live on a Source Pay platform, and they were also going to be paying their suppliers out of this platform. And unfortunately, what happened when they imported the suppliers into the new Procure to Pay, Source Pay platform, or spend management, if you wanted to call it that, they did not move over the banking information. So they had about 10,000 suppliers in total. We needed to quickly rationalize and validate about 6,000 of those. So we have a team of people. All they do is supplier enablement all day long. And so they're very knowledgeable in what it takes to get a supplier to be fully onboarded into the process. And to be fully onboarded, that means we have all of the information that we need, banking information, PO contact information, that they're fully set up on the portal to be able to transact effectively. And then in certain cases, setting up the CXML and the catalog, the punch-out catalogs as needed. So we went through about 6,000 of these suppliers, and we also recognized that there were some data issues with this. I know, big surprise to everyone listening that there were data issues, particularly with suppliers. So we found duplicate suppliers that could be removed. And so we worked with the team not only to go through the supplier enablement process, but also help them cleanse their data at the same time, because who needs duplicate suppliers to be enabled or an inactive suppliers to be enabled? So we went through that effort to really rationalize the data, cleanse the data, and then we started a very visible process of getting those suppliers onboarded. Now, what does it take to do that, right? There's a couple of things. First of all, there's a prioritization effort. So we worked with the client to understand what were the top priority suppliers in their network that we needed to get on faster. Those included reoccurring payments. So we just know we're going to pay them every month or every other month, whatever that looked like. So we wanted to make sure that those were prioritized. We also had suppliers that had pending invoices that were not getting paid because of the lack of information, the data in the system. So between the reoccurring suppliers and those suppliers that had past due or outstanding invoices, we moved those to the top. So we not only could help resolve those issues, but hopefully get ahead of the issues and start working on proactively getting the rest of the suppliers stood up. So that's exactly what we did. We started working through the supplier list, and what really benefits, because some people might be saying, oh, I'm just going to add more headcount, temporary headcount that could help us with this. Here's where the rubber hits the road. The supplier enablement team needs to be experts in the technology. Because what happens is the suppliers have a ton of questions typically. If they've never used this platform before, they need to have one-on-one guidance around how to get the account set up. They need to understand what that process is going to look like. So we do hands-on training, we do recorded trainings, we walk them through the process, we follow up with them to make sure everything is going well, and we create process documentation for them, troubleshooting guides, and making sure that the supplier really fully understands their role in the process and how to use the technology. Sometimes the technology could be super simple. It could be just like responding to an email, but it could be also very complicated where they are going into the portal and filling out information. The whole idea, though, is we want to get as many suppliers onboarded, fully onboarded, all the data collected, that they're transacting correctly, and that the CXML and punch-outs for those handfuls of suppliers are set up effectively. So that's what we did. And it was really interesting because that particular client, we were able to onboard all of their suppliers, all 10,000 suppliers in 4 months. And we were able to validate and go through all of the data collection, all of that detailed data collection for the 6,000 of those 10,000 suppliers. So some of those suppliers, a 4,000 difference was that they already had most of the information populated for those 4,000. We eliminated about 100 different duplicate suppliers and or inactive suppliers as we went through that process to help clean up their data further. And not only did we prioritize effectively to get this done so that it quieted a lot of the noise that was happening during the implementation, but we also trained the internal team effectively so that they could do this moving forward. So we are just rolling off of this client, which is great, but now they have the expertise and a managed quantity of suppliers that they can manage moving forward. So since we were able to proactively get so much done, now it would only be an onboarding of the new suppliers or a supplier that has not been used in a while that now all of a sudden has a new invoice that they need to manage. So it has really helped them with some of their cash flow issues that they were faced with, and now they have a sustainable supplier onboarding and enablement process that they can manage internally. So that's how you can get it done. Now, I will say at the end of the day, the technologies are changing quite often. So we're starting to see more, I think, AP focused type of applications. It might not help you on the PO side, but some of these applications where you don't have to onboard them to a portal, the suppliers to a portal, they will just accept whatever type of invoice that's coming in will be accepted in and translated into an electronic invoice, which is super cool. So if you know that you have hundreds of thousands of suppliers and you're looking at these technologies right now, you might want to look at options like that where you don't have to onboard them to a portal. It will take out quite a bit of the work when it comes to supplier enablement. However, you still have to do the data collection piece. So if you're missing data, PO addresses, banking information to send communications to, email addresses where you can send communications to, that still will all need to be done, but at least you don't have the onboarding to the transactional process and to the portal, because at least from an AP standpoint, you still might have some of that on the PO side. So anyway, that technology is forming as we speak. I think there's some really good technologies that are coming to play that will hopefully eliminate some of the burden, but there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done in any implementation around supplier enablement. So some tips for you: make sure that you have your data straight, that your data is clean as possible as you're going into one of these implementations. Understand what data needs to be collected from these suppliers well in advance of the go live so that you can prepare accordingly, because this does take effort and time to be able to do. You can accelerate your timelines by bringing in a third party like Wonder Services. That's part of what we do to help your suppliers get onboarded as quickly as possible. So those are some considerations when you're looking at supplier enablement. Oh, the other thing before I move on, understand which ones are truly CXML. Get in front of those suppliers as quickly as you can, because it is an integration and usually needs to be prioritized on the supplier side to get done. So certain suppliers, it takes 4 months notice, 6 months notice before they would even start working on your punch-out catalog or your CXML integration. So try to identify those really early on in your project, because it does take time and effort to get that done. All right, that is my little spiel on supplier enablement. It keeps on coming up all the time, y'all. Like everyone, I'm like, how's it going? And they're like, supplier enablement is just a thorn in our sides. And so I wanted to do this video, hopefully raise some awareness of the issue, give you some pointers around how you can proceed forward and what to look out for. But if you've liked this video, please hit the like button and the subscribe. I am Amanda Prochaska. I'm the founder and chief Wonder Officer of Wonder Services. Love bringing this content to you because I feel like if we all share a little bit more of our knowledge, we can accelerate beyond some of the issues that we're seeing today more effectively. We release videos all the time, so please stay in touch with us, and cheers. Until next time, we will see you later.